Good morning, John Muchley here, pastor at the Ferndale Alliance Church. We have been working our way through the Sermon on the Mount, and we are stopped at Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, where Jesus says this: "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit murder.'" And then Jesus goes on and marvelously expounds for us what it means to not to commit murder. Today I want to look at the sad and tragic and certainly interesting case of a man falsely accused of murder. And don't forget this man's name, Alton Logan. Alton Logan. Let me read what we know about Alton Logan from the National Registry of Exonerations. And by the way, if you want a fuller account of this story, and you may well because it's very interesting, you can search for the 60 Minutes interview, which is online still. Just search 60 Minutes on Alton Logan. Here we go. Concerns the city of Chicago, which is where I was born, and maybe that's why I'm uniquely interested in this. Mom and Dad and my sister and I lived in just outside of Chicago for a few years. 2 African American men shot and killed Lloyd Wycliffe and wounded Alvin Thompson on January 11th, 1982 in an attempted armed robbery of a McDonald's restaurant on the far south side of Chicago, where the victims were security guards. The next month, Alton Logan and Edgar Hope were arrested and charged with murder and attempted murder based on identifications by the surviving guard, who was right about Hope involved in murder, but was wrong about Logan, who was innocent at home and in bed. The week after Hope and Logan were arrested and charged, another black man, Anju Wilson, was arrested and charged with the unrelated murders of 2 Chicago police officers, William Fahey and Richard O'Brien. Hope then confided to his lawyer, Mark Miller, that he had committed the McDonald's crime with Wilson, not with Logan. When Miller told Wilson's public defenders, Dale Coventry and Jamie Koontz, what Hope had said, they, the 2 attorneys representing Wilson, confronted Wilson. He told them that indeed he and Hope had committed the McDonald's crime against the security guard. In fact, when you watch the 60 Minutes interview, you get the impression that he was kind of giddy and proud of the fact that somebody else was being charged with a crime that he, Wilson, had committed. As obvious as it was to Coventry and Koontz, the lawyers representing Wilson, that Logan was innocent, they were ethically bound not to reveal during Wilson's lifetime what he had told them in confidence. They did, however, prepare a notarized affidavit describing Wilson's confession to them, which they kept in a locked box. And with the permission of Wilson, Wilson would not let them reveal the truth until Wilson had died. That's what Wilson had told them. There it would remain in a locked box for a quarter of a century until Wilson died of natural causes in prison on November 19, 2007. And at that point, Coventry and Koontz, those that had defended Wilson, opened the box and broke their long silence. 5 months later, Logan, an innocent man, was released on bail, but prosecutors threatened to retry him. But finally, charges against Logan were dismissed on September 4, 2008, more than 26 years after he was arrested for a murder that he did not commit. He subsequently received a certificate of innocence and as a result was awarded $199,000 in state compensation. Later, January 2013, the city of Chicago agreed to pay Logan $10.25 million to settle a federal wrongful conviction lawsuit. Convicted, 26 years in jail for a crime that he did not commit. An innocent man. How do we look on a story like that? I have thought a lot about these two attorneys who knew the truth and what they could have done. They say that they researched it, that looked at every angle possible. And even if they had come out and said that their guy, Wilson, was guilty, that evidence, that testimony could not have been admitted into court because it was illegal, because it was a violation of what's called attorney-client privileges. I thought of it this way. Maybe they should just come out with the truth, announce it in a front page story, and the consequences would have probably ruined their lives as attorneys. They were young men at the time, just getting started in their law practice. What should they have done? Oddly enough, one of the attorneys attended the sentencing of Alton Logan, because Logan was either going to spend life in prison or he was going to get the death penalty, which was used quite a bit in the state of Chicago at that time. The attorney thought if Logan had received the death penalty, then and only then could he come forth and reveal what he knew. That was his understanding of the law. But because he got a different kind of death penalty, that is life in prison, he couldn't come forth. Nearly at the same time, Anju Wilson was eventually found guilty of killing the two police officers, and he was facing the death penalty as well. And I thought this was kind of interesting. The jury voted 10-2 to give him the death penalty. And oddly enough, at least to me, it was 10 women, the 10 women on the jury against Anju Wilson, who had killed the two cops, that voted for the death penalty, and the only 2 men on the jury voted to give him life sentence. So how do we look at all that? An innocent man suffering for something he had never done. That, of course, is the greatest injustice that anybody could possibly imagine. Somebody suffering, being punished for something that they had never done. But isn't that the message of Christianity, which carries forth the greatest of injustices, which I know that for a lot of skeptics, for unbelievers, it's hard to understand and hard to appreciate what Jesus Christ has done for us. That the most righteous, the most innocent, the most loving and sincere and sacrificial, the most morally pure and good person that there ever was tried, tortured, and executed on a darkened hill some 2,000 years ago for us. It says in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18, it says, Christ also suffered once for sins, and then this phrase, the just for the unjust, or we might say the righteous for the unrighteous, the innocent for the guilty, the good for the wretched. And why? It says in the verse, it says that he might bring us to God. This is God's method for bringing us into relationship with him. I trust that none of us here are literal murderers, although there are people listening to this video who have been convicted and who have spent time in prison for things that they should not have done. Jesus Christ is the one who died for us, the innocent one, the only one worthy of dying on behalf of people, someone who was perfectly innocent, Jesus Christ. That is the message of Christianity, the innocent Son of God dying for the sins of the world that we might have life, that we might have a relationship with him, with God. I invite you to receive that forgiveness, receive that substitutionary sacrifice, and then receive the forgiveness and the life and the freedom that God wants you to have. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening today, and have a great week.